Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi. So today we continue with chapter 8, identifying what isn't right. And we said that we were going to break up chapter 8 into two parts. The one part is the beginning section of this chapter, which talks about the issue of your spouse disengaging from the relationship. And we said that there's levels to that. That a person is not completely uninterested just because they show signs of disinterest, but that definitely is a problem. And we also talked about when it is that a spouse is disinterested in the relationship, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're cheating on you or there's infidelity. And now in today's session, we're going to talk about uh, signs of infidelity and the whole idea of whether it is that a relationship can come back from that. And we may have to actually also break up this class session into multiple sessions in order to deal with the topic fully. But for today, let's begin. First of all, in brief, she gave us some signs when the partner is no longer interested. And so we said that this is full disengagement. They're always busy. They don't talk much. They keep blaming you for issues. They keep pointing out your flaws. They have changed you. They don't include you in anything, in decision making and so on and so forth. They don't apologize anymore. They have excuses for everything. They no longer care about your welfare. They forget things that are important, like birthdays or weddings, that type of thing. They treat others better than the way that they treat you. And then she finally said, they have or are cheating on you. That's the whole issue of disinterest. And we covered a lot of those points before, right? And so, for instance, we said that in a healthy relationship, a partner showing interest is that you're a priority, right? Versus not being a priority. That which follows that, as far as another sign of a healthy relationship where a partner showing interest is that they communicate with you versus not communicating with you. Another part would be that they look for an excuse for you, or they look to understand why it is that you're doing, not blaming you constantly. Another point of health that we can identify is not that they point out your flaws, but they are aware of your strengths and they point out your strengths versus being outright nasty or putting your struggles in your face with consistency. And there's a lot to be said on that, people. We're just going in brief over this book, but there's a lot to be said about that problem. Another sign is that they have changed on you. They have changed you. They have changed you. I'm sorry, I said that I made a mistake. But you could say that they have changed on you as well, the way that they treat you. But here she says they have changed you. You lose yourself. Your emotional state is distorted. Your thinking is undermined. You feel agitated, right? The other issue is when you're not included. So then a healthy relationship is that they include you in the decision-making process and so on and so forth. And then she says they don't apologize anymore. That's a sign of disinterest. They always leave a text and so on and so forth. So a healthy relationship is where we are aware of how it is that we deal with each other. We are sure that we're not just leaving the other person in the dark, and we do make sure that we follow up when we break our promises or we don't fulfill a commitment and so on and so forth, that we're explaining to the other person why it is that something didn't happen. Not giving constant excuses for things, but actually showing up, you know what I'm saying? Versus, I can't make it to this, or I can't do this because of this reason on a regular basis. In other words, don't give an excuse for why it is that on a regular basis, why it is that you can't participate, or why it is that you're not supporting your partner, but actually supporting your partner, showing up for things and so on and so forth. They no longer care about your welfare. That's a big problem. Right. And so the opposite of that is caring about the person's well-being, emotionally, mentally, and physically, and where they're at, and so on and so forth. And being sensitive to things that are meaningful, like a person's graduation or a person's achievement or an invitation. In other words, keeping especially these symbolic events in mind. They treat others better, right? The issue is, here that we have to always keep in mind what is the character that we have towards other people. And so let's move on to this last point. She says they have or are cheating on you. Let's talk about now the signs of fidelity instead of focusing on that. But actually, let's hold on for a second before we go forward. Let's actually read that small part because it's only 2 sentences. She says cheating is a sure tell sign that confirms their disinterest. Right. So cheating is equivalent to no longer being interested. It doesn't mean that all signs of a person's disinterest means cheating, but definitely cheating means disinterest. Right. Okay. So now let's go to this point. The point of what are the signs that a partner has committed infidelity. And of course, this is just a general outline. We're not going to say that is always the case, that this is a sure methodology for defining or determining or concluding or uncovering that someone has cheated. But it is a framework. And it's interesting because it comes from a woman's perspective. So she said that she stated earlier, if the problem in the relationship isn't just a lack of interest, it could be infidelity. So she gave us some sort of framework to identify that there's a lack of interest in the relationship. And now she's pointing to the issue of how it is that we determine where we're at in the relationship. In the case that it's not a lack of interest that our partner is showing. So if it comes to this point, that there are many signs of disinterest on the part of your partner, and there's some indication or some proof of cheating. Now we get to the point of infidelity, right? So how do we determine that? To a certain extent, it's not going to be 100% that we're able to know with certainty. And Islamically, we have to realize that when we start talking about accusing someone of cheating, you have to have some solid evidence. So here, we're not putting them in the category of a person that has cheated in the Islamic sense. We're putting them in the category of a person that has committed infidelity, and we have some indications to that being the case. Unless we see them, we can't say, that they actually cheated in terms of performing a sexual act with someone else. But we can definitely identify some signs which teach us that something is up in the relationship, and it very well may have been the case that they cheated. But in order to make an Islamic ruling on that, that has its own conditions and so on and so forth. Here she says that the sign of infidelity has a lot of impact on the person that was cheated on, right? Most of the toll. And so it can break the person on multiple levels. And it's the biggest obstacle to resolve issues in a marriage. It's a deal breaker for many people. Immediate deal breaker, often considered. The reason why she said it's often considered an immediate deal breaker. The reason why she said is often considered an immediate deal breaker if a person has cheated is because she wants to make the argument that it's possible to continue in the relationship if there was infidelity. It's possible to continue in the relationship if there was infidelity. That's her argument. As an imam, I'm not going to say that we force anyone to stay in a relationship if there's infidelity. But if a person chooses to stay in that relationship, and if the conditions are in place, then we're not going to say that that person is wrong for staying in that relationship. What do I mean if the conditions are in place? If the conditions are in place to better the situation, that person is opting to stay in that relationship. So we can't necessarily jump in to say they're stupid, they shouldn't stay in the relationship. They're opting to stay in that relationship. But we can say that that's your decision. And if you see that the conditions for bettering the relationship are in place, then we support you in that process. But if the conditions are not in place, I'm not going to support you in that process, because then what you're doing is just hurting yourself and creating more problems. But if the conditions are in place, some basic conditions to show that the relationship can be safeguarded, or the relationship can be repaired, or the relationship can be saved, then, and the person chooses to stay in that relationship, then we can offer support, right? But we are never going to tell someone to stay in a relationship just for the sake of the marriage because there was cheating, right? There was, because there was cheating, it should be overlooked. No, we will tell the person that, look, this is a deal breaker in most cases. You know what I'm saying? You have the option to go or to stay. It's up to you. You know what I'm saying? And if you go, we support you in that regard. We don't support you staying in a relationship, which is going to be more destructive, right? But she brings in, it was actually a surprise to me, she brings in the whole concept of trying to get beyond infidelity. She says a lot of times we're so blinded by the love for our partners that we fail to notice the signs of adultery or cheating. It is usually someone else who throws the idea our way, and then that becomes the only thing on our minds. And of course, then that becomes a serious problem. And people can go crazy with that. People can fall into a situation in which they are not in their right minds anymore. And that's why we can support what she said, that it takes the toll on the person cheated on the greatest. In other words, that person is affected the most. So she says, not only is there thinking that's dominating our minds, so to speak, and we become obsessed with that, or it's disturbing us, or it's collapsing us, and our emotions are all over the place, right? This is what I'm getting from what she's saying. She said, we instantly begin to recognize the changes in their behavior, in their tone, in their appearance, how they deal with us. However, one can't just confront someone on a few hunches, and that's what we were saying earlier, right? We have to be careful, especially as Muslims, because we have a process that we go through as Muslims that Islam guides us on how we're going to deal with this issue, right? And that has a lot of technicality to it, but that doesn't mean just because, in other words, because for us as Muslims, cheating on your partner is a social offense. It's not just an offense towards the marriage, it's an offense towards society. In this society that we live in, that's not the case. So, for instance, the reality of proving that there's cheating, it requires tangible seeing of the act, right? And so, in this case, what do we do? What do we do when we don't have that tangible evidence? Do we just ignore it? No, we can't just ignore it, because it may be the case that they're cheating. So, and they may hide behind the idea that we don't have actual eyewitnesses. See what I'm saying? So we can't go into that process of thinking about the situation in this way. We have to be more realistic that there are relationships in which there's infidelity that takes place, but we don't have the evidence to say that infidelity has taken place in the way that Islam is telling us, right? But Islam doesn't just leave us at that. Islam also tells us to be able to think wisely. And so part of thinking wisely is that we are able to see when there's signs, right? And a lot of times, to be frank with you, when these things take place and there's investigation, a person will find some indirect evidence, or a person will find that the person that's the cheater will confess, but when it comes to the issue of calling it zina in the sense of Islam, so that an Islamic ruling is put upon the person, that it is a procedural reality in Islam. You know what I'm saying? That we have a system of evidences and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean, because we can't prove it in that way, that the person didn't cheat. You see what I'm saying? The person may have cheated, the person may admit it, or the person may not admit it, or we may have some evidences, but we don't have that eyewitness testimony. Right? And in many ways, it's a protection, the way that it is that the book and the Sunnah deal with it, so that it's not something that's just everyone is accused of because there's hunches and so on and so forth. But that's chaos in the society. And we have to remember that this is a real criminal offense in the way that Muslims think. So, it goes before, a judge and so on and so forth. And nowadays, that's not the case. You know what I'm saying? In the type of society that we're living in, That's not the case that is going to go before a judge in the same way. Even amongst the non-Muslims, the issue of infidelity doesn't hold the same weight that it used to in the past. But it's a ground for divorce, right? In the past, it was very problematic in the society. So in any event, she says you can't just confront someone and call them a cheater because you have a hunch, right? Because this is something that is a deal breaker. This is something that can wreck the relationship, right? So make sure that if you're accusing someone, right, of having an affair, you have solid proof to show. And the solid proof that she's talking about, it may not be an eyewitness testimony like we would like in Islam, but it could be a video. It could be, other things that are going on, recordings, and all of that has different levels, like audio recording. It has different levels of strength. We're not going to say that it's all at the same level of strength, because in today's time, with the way that technology is, a video can be manufactured, and audio can be manufactured, but it may be the case that those things lead to some real suspicion, right? Something that is a justified suspicion, right? That's why we keep pointing to this, that there may be signs. Those signs may be strong signs, right, that we can't ignore, but we have to be careful when we start, trying to accuse someone of cheating, and then we want an Islamic ruling placed on that to be what we understand the ruling to be zina in the deen. We may have evidence that there's cheating, but it may not reach that level where we can say that this is actual zina. You know what I'm saying? We can say, yeah, there's infidelity there. We want to separate between infidelity and actually the concept of zina in Islam, where there is an actual sex act that took place, that was witnessed, right, between two parties, and you're not, one of those parties, and that is meaning your spouse has sex with another person that they're not married to while you're married to them. Because we have to also remember that there's different definitions that that come into play here. So in any event, let's stay on this topic. When we look at the reality, right, she's saying that if you're going to accuse a partner, the chance of that being admitted to, or the partner accepting their fault, is almost next to nothing, right? So she's saying you better have everything together when you go that route. When you go that route, you better make sure that you have a case to deal with that, so that you can hold them accountable. So one of the signs is they're unreliable. There was a time when you were the center of all their attention, but now you feel like you are no more than an afterthought in their lives. This can mean they're unfaithful. She uses as a second sign, she kisses less often. If they have started to avoid initiating a kiss, and they're austere, meaning they deny you affection, or they avoid it, during sex and so on and so forth, unless you pull them right into it, then she says, then they are cheating. I wouldn't know if I would say then they are cheating, because there could be a lot of different reasons for that. But she's making it a claim that they are cheating. They may also bail on the foreplay, avoid making eye contact, and time out their sex. Right? It's a sign that their mind is wandering and their heart is someplace else. Yeah, that may be the case. It could be a sickness, it could be whatever else, but that also, she's saying, is a sign of cheating. He or she is always working, usually late. He or she is always working, usually late, right? They're working on something important. In other words, time becomes an issue. Them giving you time. There's always an excuse why they can't give you time. There's always an excuse why they can't be available to you. You know what I'm saying? That's an issue. They avoid being present. When people want to be in each other's lives, they find the way. They find a way to be in your life. When they want to be in your life, they find a way to be in your life. Video calls, phone calls, rescheduling, making every possible opportunity easy in order for you to be together. That's something that is very important to understand. Husband and wife have to make that a priority in a healthy relationship. So healthy relationships means that you're reliable. There's affection that's shown. There's intimacy, that you make the time for your spouse, right? So she's just saying, like, look, if the person doesn't have time, and they're unreliable, they don't show affection to you, they don't show interest, the intimacy is off, that's a serious. She's saying those are serious indications of cheating, right? So she's saying when time is minimized to spend with you, then then there's the issue that comes up that they're making time for other people. She said every time you confront the person, him or her, they call you crazy. Even if just some casual complaints or issues of talking, they start to act all weird and call you crazy for even thinking like that, right? For sharing what's going on. No one likes to be caught red-handed, and a cheater will always say they haven't cheated. So take the hint if they act too surprised on the idea that you called them a cheater, right? That you called them a cheater. The dressing changes, right? When a person is changing their appearance for the other person, it could be a sign that, they want to impress that person. So if they seem obsessed with going to the gym or shopping for more sharp looking sexy clothes, it could mean they are cheating. You know what I'm saying? It could be that they are cheating. I would say that sometimes people begin to do self-care too. We have to be careful with this one. They begin to do self-care. They begin, and a lot of times when people start doing personal development stuff, that's where they go that route. But also when people are interested, you know what I'm saying, in the whole cheating side, they're taking care of themselves. They're, you know what I'm saying, they want to attract that attention, so it becomes a serious issue. You know what I'm saying? They want to make sure their body is a certain way. It's not just for health reasons and so on and so forth. Or they want to make themselves look attractive for that partner, right? On a physical level, and then the clothes start to change, the hygiene, everything. The issue of getting angered when questioned, right? Where were you until now? The person, starts to show that their stories of where they were don't match and they become offended. But now some people are overly suspicious and they put their partner in the situation where their partner is always having to defend themselves because they're suspicious. Now it is the case if there was cheating in the past and there's mistrust, that that tension is there because you're asking, where were you? And so even though you may be trying to get beyond that in the relationship, you have to realize that the relationship was injured, right? But let's talk about the case where there's cheating taking place. Let's not talk about the case where cheating has taken place and now the relationship is trying to get better. That has to be another session. I want to keep this clear for this session. Signs of cheating. The person gets angry when you question them, right? When a person, is getting angry because their stories don't match and you call them out, and they become defensive, and there's other supporting signs, you know what I'm saying? That's a serious issue because why is it that husband and wife will be angry at each other? You know what I'm saying? If they were questioning, where were you? Where were you, honey? Where were you, babe? Where were you, habibi? You know what I'm saying? Oh, I wasn't here. I was there. You know what I'm saying? And there's consistency in that. What's the problem? You know what I'm saying? Some, of course, so like I mentioned before, some people are micromanagers. Some people are overly suspicious. Some people are paranoid. Some people have trust issues themselves. And a spouse may not be cheating, but the spouse that's concerned may throw that on the other spouse and create an issue. But here, she's using this as a sign of cheating. She stays up late. A sudden shift in their bedtime routine indicates affair. Cheating partners consider partners' sleeping time as the safest time to text or message their new love interest. Right? And that becomes the issue. Unfortunately, a lot of times availability, when your partner doesn't make themselves available or they limit your access to them, you know what I'm saying? It could be for a number of different reasons. But here we're talking in the context that there's other signs along with this, other signs that we are indicating that are signs of cheating. We're not talking about maybe a person is overwhelmed with work, or a person is trying to focus on a particular task, or they're doing something and then they're not available at that time. You know what I'm saying? They may go to the gym and they may leave the phone in the locker or something because they're swimming or whatever it may be. Or they went into an area to visit someone and the signal is not good. Like, in other words, we have to be careful casting suspicion. Here we're not talking about that type of thing. When a person's accessibility is very limited, you know what I'm saying? When we're talking about the person's accessibility being very limited, here we're talking about the context of cheating, right? So a sudden shift in their bedtime routine indicates an affair. Cheating partners consider a partner's sleeping time as the safest to text or message their new love. I'm saying accessibility in general. When there's limitations on that and there's other signs of a person cheating, that's a problem because we should be able to communicate with each other. I'm saying that in a healthy relationship, we also have to understand that sometimes we may not be able to access our partner. Right? So that shouldn't automatically be a point of suspicion. But it's something to be alert to when there's other signs along with that sign to indicate the cheating. Because why is it that husband and wife or people that are getting to know one another in a personal relationship, they're intended to each other, there's ketab el kitaba, all of that type of stuff, there's an Islamic contract, they may not have consummated the marriage. For the non-Muslims, you know what I'm saying, they may be in a relationship. Why is it that there's no accessibility? People have to explain to each other why there's no accessibility. There's no reason for that. Communication is how a relationship is built. Accessibility is how people get to know one another, right? And so here we go on to the next one. His or her stories seem inconsistent. Sometimes they won't say a word about where they were, and sometimes they will give away too much information. So too much information is another sign that there's something fishy going on. They're trying to make an excuse, right? And so unfortunately, when we don't allow each other to have routines, that's part of the dilemma that we're in. That's part of the dilemma that we're in. There's no intimacy right here in the relationship. Not just physical touch, but you also find them emotionally unavailable. Again, this is in line with other signs. Now, emotional unavailability is a problem in relationship. If that's by itself, it might not necessarily mean that it's a sign of cheating, but something else could be wrong in the relationship. A person could be depressed, mental health issues, so on and so forth. But when there's no intimacy and there's constant avoidance, of intimacy, if it's not mental health issues, you know what I'm saying? If it's unaccompanied by other signs, then okay, we have to figure out why that's taking place. But if it's accompanied by other signs, she's saying that it could be cheating. They never put down their phone. If they seem stuck to their phone all the time and even taking it with them when taking the trash out or going, it's a sure sign that there's something going on. The phone thing is definitely madness because the accessibility to what's going on the phone, people limit it to hide, people limit it for security reasons or whatever. And so then the phone issue, going through your spouse's phone, many times becomes a point of people misinterpreting what's going on, or many times it becomes a way for a person to figure out that the person is not being loyal. The phone issue, lack of wanting to show accessibility to the phone, is a serious problem. You know what I'm saying? For many people, and unfortunately, in today's time, that is a reality. You know what I'm saying? That's a reality. Transparency goes out the door. Transparency goes out the door. The person, pays attention to himself or herself. Is always appraisable that your spouse dresses up for you, but if they are suddenly worried about how they look, then it becomes an issue in the context. Why is it that they're always worried about how they look? Who are they trying to impress? You get one-word answers. They don't communicate with you much. They start cutting off. the communication. They don't give too much information. Yes, no, that type of thing. When partners lose interest in their spouses or are having an affair, they fear to communicate too much. They want to play it carefully and not say or do something that will get them caught. You know what I'm saying? They are spending too much. If all of the sudden, there's too many credit card bills and so on and so forth, where's that money going in that regard? You know what I'm saying? And that becomes an issue. He's doing things that he hated before. She's doing things that she hated before. Remember the time you asked them to go golfing or go jogging or do this or do that, and they refused, and all of a sudden now, they start being interested in those things. Who are they trying to share those interests with? Of course, a person can take on new habits, but we're saying this to be the case, that these are the signs when accompanied by other signs. Not just one sign, but accompanied by other signs, which kind of gives us a framework for when there's cheating. And we have to learn how to be careful, not to jump to the assumption that a person is cheating. Sometimes when we're too suspicious, we read cheating into everything. So some of these things are mental health issues. Some of these things are distress because of what's going on in the relationship, the brokenness. It's not necessarily that they're cheating, but they may be getting support from someone else. It doesn't mean that they're cheating. They can have a counselor friend, a life coach. They can have someone that's supporting them in the process, and they could be really torn and broken. It doesn't mean that they're cheating. It can mean that they have totally disengaged at another level, and it may look like what looks like cheating. You see what I'm saying? The signs of infidelity, and that's because maybe they're leaning on relatives, maybe they're leaning on friends. You know what I'm saying? Because they're trying to figure out what's going on in the relationship. And then maybe not. Maybe they're just really cheating. You see what I'm saying? That's why we have to be careful when we come to a judgment on what is cheating, what is not. She talks about the whole process of, can we go back to how we were, and can we heal the relationship? I'm going to leave that to another episode. You know what I'm saying? But she definitely said that it's possible for a couple to get beyond infidelity. And we said that I am not comfortable as a man telling a person to stay in a relationship in which there was cheating, unless that's what they want, and signs and conditions have to be put in place, a willingness to work on the issues, right, in order for there to be support on that regard. But just to tell someone to go back in for the sake of going back in, nah. Because that causes problems on the whole community. The person is just going to keep coming back to you. That person is going to go through issues. If there's children, they're going to go through issues. It's not going to work. There has to be a willingness to correct the situation in order for that to work. And it's not only in the issue of infidelity, it's also the interest when there's disinterest. And so with that, we end. And the next episode will come back to this issue of, can we come back from infidelity as a couple? Again, she says yes, but she says that certain things have to be in place, like forgiveness, the power of trust, restoring it, being honest, reconciliation. You know what I'm saying? Knowing where to share the blame, setting some ground rules. Physical intimacy has to be something that's part of the relationship, and learning how to let go, and learning when to ignore certain things, right, that have taken place, because now we're moving forward. We'll go into more detail with that in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.